Hey guys, Tony here, part 2 for my prediction for the 2019 UEFA Champions League final. In case you didn't know before, I have previously predicted Juventus to defeat Paris Saint-Germain in the 2019 UEFA Champions League final. I correctly asserted that Paris Saint-Germain had zero chance of reaching this year's Champions League final. I said they'd have zero chance. They're about to get eliminated by Real Madrid. In this video, the big thing to look out for is the number 23, a huge revelation to be made. The 2018 UEFA Champions League would be the 27th edition of the Champions League, and I'm going to explain to you why that indeed is going to be very significant. This would be the 64th edition of the Champions League. This Champions League is going to be a tribute to Buffon. There have been reports that he may end up changing his mind about his retirement, and there's a reason why that's happening. I talked about the number 13 in the previous video. I'm going to link it. I'm going to link it in the description. It is Buffon. That equals 64. Notice that his last name equals 28. Born on the 28th of January, the 28th Champions League, Juventus can be the defending champions in this one. Also, 26 prior Champions Leagues to the 27th Champions League, the 64th Champions League overall. This is why they're going to win. Also, Juventus Football Club equals 64 in the 64th Champions League. It is Allegri and Gematria that equals 64, Massimiliano Allegri. And this is a big reason why Juventus Champions League finals are just all rigged and scripted. Why Juventus' last two Champions League finals losses under Allegri were completely rigged and completely scripted. Allegri's Pythagorean Gematria value equals 37. And notice that with a victory in the Champions League final, Juventus can have a 3-7 record in the Champions League final under who? Massimiliano Allegri. It is Allegri and Gematria that equals 37. It is Juventus that's going to win the Champions League in the 27th edition of the Champions League ever since it was renamed the Champions League from the European Cup. 27th Champions League, 2-7 record in the Champions League with the chance to go 3-7 in the Champions League final. All the numbers are adding up towards Juventus winning the 2019 Champions League final. This year, as I've said before, it's going to be Bayern Munich over Barcelona. 10th Champions League final, Dybala number 10. This is sort of the idea that you should take away from this video. PSG in Gematria equals 15. Why that is significant? It is because 15 Champions Leagues ago was the last time a French team reached the Champions League final, back when they lost to Jose Mourinho's Porto. Interesting enough, occurred in the year 2003, the year of the 2003 Champions League. The Champions League that began in 2003 equals 23. The Champions League that began in 2003 was the last time a French team lost in the final. I'm predicting Paris Saint-Germain to lose the Champions League final in 2019. PSG equals 15. 15 Champions Leagues later, France is going to lose again in the Champions League final. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14 for this year. Bayern Munich is winning this year. And then 15 would be Paris Saint-Germain losing the final. This is why PSG's Gematria value of 15 is going to be very significant. Don't forget that it is Paris that equals 27. They could face off against Juventus, who'd have a 2-7 record in the Champions League final in the 27th edition of the Champions League. 63 prior Champions Leagues to next year. It is a Bavaria tribute for Bayern, which is why they're going to win the Champions League this year. So Juventus last won the Champions League in 1996, the 22nd day of the 5th month. That is yet another 27 connection, proof that Juventus' last couple Champions League finals were indeed very scripted by the numbers. 2019, 1996, a time span of 23 years. Dani Alves, who played with Juventus when they reached the Champions League final last year, he wears number 23. He wore number 23 with Juventus. This is a sign that Juventus is going to end the 23-year Champions League drought against Dani Alves in PSG. It is part of the script. It was Mario Mandzukic who pointed out that it was Dani Alves' side locker room tirades. That was the reason why the team got distracted and lost the Champions League final. I want to intervene to silence rumors of an ugly atmosphere inside the Juventus locker room. It was simply Bonucci and Dani Alves that created the chaos. Unfortunately, with the sales, everything will be calm once again. They were the ones who had the role during the final simply because they have diametrically opposed personalities. Leo and Danny would argue all the time. On the day of the final, we simply watched another one of their many dramas. As soon as we got into the locker room, everyone had treated this like a normal game, just 3 points up grabs, or at least that's how it seemed. So I expected Dani Alves to do his usual routine of putting on the radio, party groove music in the locker room when we were getting changed. But this time, though, he didn't stop there. He went over the top, playing Samba do Janeiro at full volume as if he wanted to break our eardrums, and then started dancing like there was no game being played or there was no tomorrow. I thought I was being stupid, but ignored him, went into my locker. Leo didn't. As for him, the Champions League was everything, an obsession. He went up to Danny and said he'd break his legs in 3 seconds if he didn't turn off that music. A row erupted. It just kept going until Danny said that if he lost the final, he'd still have 3 Champions League trophies in his locker room, and it acted like it didn't mean anything to have Leonardo Bonucci win the Champions League. At that point, everyone turned around scandalized. I won the Champions League, but I'd never dare say something like that to a teammate. We shouldn't even have thought about the eventuality of defeat. Then Leo grabbed Danny by the throat as he was about to punch him. Max divided them and took a decision of real leader. He said he didn't care who started, but at the end of the game, they both got kicked out. So Dani Alves distracted the team in the locker room with the loud music, said he could care less about winning another Champions League, even though the final was being played against Real Madrid, his rival team, since he used to play with Barcelona. So it's Dani Alves that's going to be the villain who Juventus is going to get vengeance against in that Champions League final. Blaise Matuidi, Juventus central midfielder, was signed with the club from Juventus. He's another storyline for the Champions League final when he faces off against his former team in the 2019 Champions League final. Blaise Matuidi, for instance, 203 appearances for Paris Saint-Germain. A lot like Juventus' 23-year title drought. 33 goals with Paris Saint-Germain before joining Juventus, the Freemason club. After all, Masonry 33, Juventus FC equals 33. Very fitting by the numbers. This is why Blaise Matuidi is with Juventus in the first place. It's worth noting that Juventus is going to end a 23-year title drought. Gianluigi Buffon's first Champions League final was the 2003 Champions League final. 20 plus 3 equals 23. Get this, with the number 27. Juventus went into the Champions League final as champions of Italy for the 27th time. Interesting that next year is going to be the 27th Champions League once again. Juventus has a 2-7 record in the Champions League final. Juventus last won the Champions League on the 22nd day of May. That adds up to 27. The number 27 is one of the biggest numbers out there for Juventus to win the Champions League final. In Gianluigi Buffon's first Champions League final, Juventus won the league for the 27th time. In their current record of 2-7 in the Champions League final, completely rigged, completely scripted, Allegri equaling 3-7. You see where the numbers are heading towards right now? Completely rigged, completely scripted. His first final in the Champions League in 2003 ended in penalties. His World Cup title ended in penalties as well. In 2006, that pertained to the number 13. But 27 is the biggest number to look out for. Also, 23 is one of the biggest ones out there. No coincidence that Juventus would find itself ending a 23-year Champions League title drought. And the 2003 Champions League final happens to be the first final that Gianluigi Buffon played in as a member of Juventus. So Juve over PSG in the UEFA Champions League final. Also, it is worth noting Neymar's goal total right now. Funny with Neymar too, ladies and gentlemen. Neymar is going to be 27 years old next year as well. He's going to be a part of the narration of the Champions League final. 27 years old next year. Further support for PSG. That 23 included in his 123 appearances with Barcelona. He scored 42 total goals in the Champions League against the Freemasonic Juventus. I see this total staying at 42 before this upcoming season. Once again, it is Juventus and Masonry that equal 33. It is Freemason that equals 42. The rigged and scripted 1996 Champions League final. It was the year 96. Freemason 96 and 42. Juventus won 4-2 on penalties, rigging by the Freemasons. In this final, this guy scored in the 41st minute. Juventus end up winning the 41st Champions League, rigging by the numbers. And 4-2 on penalties for Juve. 19 plus 96 equals 115. It is Freemasonic. That equals 100. It is Freemasons with an S. That equals 115. 96 plus 19 equals 115. So I pointed out why this Champions League was completely scripted in 1996. I pointed out why Juventus losing the Champions League ever since 1996 was scripted to begin with. So number 27, Neymar, 27 years old, 23-year title drought for Juventus. Buffon's first Champions League final in 2003, 20 plus 3 equals 23. The year of the Champions League that began in the year 2003. That was the last Champions League that a French team reached the final. So Juventus over PSG. This Champions League final on the first day of June, the first day of the 6th month. France can go 1-6 in the final with a loss for their country. You see this, Juventus in its 6th final since its last title can win once again. Italy winning its 3rd title. 13 years, Gigi Buffon wins the Champions League after winning the World Cup. 13 is a lucky number in Italy. Rigging by the numbers, Juventus wins the 2019 Champions League final over Paris Saint-Germain. Their new manager, who I'm predicting to be Carlo Ancelotti. And this is why I think Carlo Ancelotti is going to be the new manager for AC Milan. It was Carlo Ancelotti that was the manager of AC Milan when they won the 2003 final. Juventus can end a 23-year title drought. Once again, it was Carlo Ancelotti that managed that AC Milan team that beat Juventus in 2003. And I think this reference to the 2003 Champions League final is going to be a reason why Carlo Ancelotti will head over to Paris Saint-Germain, and we will no longer see Unai Emery.